Hello and welcome to the latest episode in our series of Antser Subject Matter Expert Talks.
You don't have to be a therapist to really connect with our young people in school, and it can be the very smallest things that we do, which is what the films illustrate, isn't it? Because sometimes when we talk about therapeutic responses, pace, I think practitioners can feel like, oh gosh, I'm not a therapist, I can't do this. But what the films show is this is an example of what that means. Although it's therapeutic, and therapeutic sometimes sounds like you've got to be a therapist. Actually, it's how we change the way our tone of voice, our body language, and I think that's what's really empowering for professionals. And certainly when I've seen feedback, it's been around, well, actually I'm already doing that, and that's amazing, isn't it? If you're already doing that, that's going to give you confidence to know you're making a difference.
Exactly, and we use those words precisely. We say that whilst we're not therapists and whilst you're not a therapist, what you do is therapeutic because you're consistent, you're always there, you have structures and boundaries that our young people feel safe in. And what you're doing is you're increasing their sense of felt safety. And so you're being therapeutic. And what we do in school and what we do as advisors is we snorkel on the surface of the rough waves and we see just what's on top and what is just underneath that's being shown to us as, say, rough waves, using that metaphor. A therapist dives down below to help to heal what we can't see. Very, very specialist psychotherapy, etc., etc. But actually, Mrs. Smith smiling at you every single day and always having that nice cup of hot chocolate and playing that game with you and showing you that adults can be trusted because she can be trusted is therapeutic. So.
So you talked about actually how COVID came along and went to 2D, which is great that you adapted your training to 2D. We know those films can be powerful, but I know we've just been talking about going back out of COVID and back in with the headsets, because there is that difference, isn't there? The 2D films are great, but actually when you are in that headset, and I think that's feedback is the feelings, isn't it? And how have you found that kind of shift back?
So yesterday afternoon, we took the headsets and did some training in a primary school to 18 practitioners, 18 colleagues there. And so the actual logistics of using the headsets takes a bit of time and a bit of confidence. You certainly need someone who has a full understanding of, what is it they're seeing, and you need a spare one to look at and think, oh, okay, right, yeah, no, you need to be there, here and here. And so that needs thinking through, and we've developed ourselves a very clear script that we can talk through. So, please don't put it on until I've told you these things, because once you put the headset on, you can't hear what someone's telling you because it's too exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, you want to
when we always do the orientation using the elephants so that they're aware of how it feels, telling them to sit down and all those things. So those very practical things, and can you hear, and this is how you use the handset, and if you can't use the handset well, use the buttons on the side, and recentering using the Pico button all the time is really, really handy because it does move around a bit. So those physical things were actually more straightforward than I thought they'd be. It was the new lot of headsets that don't require you to be connected to the internet. They're all there, are just a doddle to use. So that was great. In terms of the responses to the films, we showed Carnaby Street. We only showed Carnaby Street and the Raelian School Triggers, actually, because we had a lot of material to go through. It was only a staff meeting, so it was only an hour and a half. And I was outside of the room with someone who was struggling to use it, and she was lagging behind a little bit. So took her outside, helped her to use it. She watched it a bit behind. I came back in the room and thought, oh, something's happened. And everyone was very, very quiet. And there were people crying. And people were extremely moved by the Carnaby Street film. And we were actually a little bit taken aback because I must have seen it hundreds of times now. Not hundreds, but, a lot of times. And I think it's very shocking. And we always up front give a health warning, as it were. We sent one out, we email one out. And we say, look, if it's too much for you, take the headset off. But the films are intended to move you, but they have been so carefully designed and devised with ethics being considered so that we don't want to traumatize you, but of course you will find them upsetting, which they did. And then it sparked some really good discussion, because the school we were in have some very challenging children with some very difficult backgrounds. And whilst the staff understand that, I think it really helped them to be in the chair where the child was sitting, and help them to think in a different way, I guess. Yeah.
Don't you? I think when you watch Carnaby Street, and it is, like you say, I've watched it quite a few times as well, but when you're and like you say, you understand maybe the children in your class and where it's challenging, but actually, and you might have read the reports about them and their history and their experiences, but we might not know. But when you see Carnaby Street and you are in Rayleigh's shoes just for 4 minutes, but how frightening that is, and you get that, it's the feelings, isn't it? And for you, and it allowing a space for practitioners to feel and connect and deepen that understanding, and it kind of becomes understanding and emotional connection then, to help them kind of come alongside those children or be able to reflect and step back and be like, okay, what is happening for them, what's behind that behaviour.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that following it on with the School Triggers film ties the two together, and then we had a conversation about triggers, and there was talk about, well, we don't know why he did this or did that, and I said, well, as you can see from the films, that there are things in that child's background, and in a prelingual state they are absorbing information about the world, about relationships, about adults, that it's not conscious thought, it's pre-verbal, pre-language, and therefore it's a felt sensory memory, and that sensory memory and those words remembered deep down in that child's brain cause that response. And they all knew that response, and they all know it's actors, they knew that response was very minor in comparison to some of the responses that we know about in school. When we do the training with our secondary colleagues, we do also use Carnaby Street, and often in utero, because it's really good for them to remember that this great big 15-year-old boy has been that 6-month-old child once, and that's where the roots of that behaviour is. And we talk about how all behaviour is communication, so that helps a lot. Yeah.
What you were just saying a bit earlier about we do, don't we? We very much support around thinking about the impact of using the films, they're using the headsets, because we know they are emotive, the content's emotive.
Yeah.
But it's that supportive environment you create in when using the films, which then and actually it's okay if it moves you, and it's it can be tears, but it's how we support people. So then, like you say, open up and have those discussions about what is it that we're finding really tricky, what are we noticing. And I think that's what's really important, isn't it? Because that's what the VR being in headset, that it allows everybody to self-reflect, to think, but then it's the conversations that are really key, isn't it, afterwards, the reflections afterwards, that can create that shift, can't they? Either, like you said earlier, about going back and thinking about what our behaviour policies look like, or actually just what can I be doing as a practitioner differently in my day-to-day work, or what am I doing well.